"Get out of my house, you intruder." That's what the HOA president screamed at me. I had come back from a trip earlier than expected, only to find her entire family comfortably settled inside my cabin, and as if their blatant trespassing wasn't enough, she had the audacity to call the police on me, the actual owner, while her husband and kids lounge around as though they'd lived there forever. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was deliberate, a calculated move that would unravel a web of lies and deceit she had spent years spinning. The day had started off quietly. The warm air carried the scent of pine and fresh-cut grass as my pickup rumbled down the gravel driveway. My work trip, a freelance digital marketing job in the city, had been cut short, giving me an unexpected long weekend. I was eager to retreat into the peace of my cabin, the place I'd bought just months ago to escape the constant noise of city life. I parked, stretched my legs, and pulled my duffel bag from the truck, already imagining myself sinking into my sofa. The front door was locked exactly as I'd left it. I slid in my key, turned it, and stepped insidia straight into a nightmare. The scene hit me like a punch to the gut. My serene hideaway had been transformed into pure chaos. On my leather sofa sat a man I'd never seen before, a Mr. Fletcher, watching football as though he owned the place. A teenage boy, Devin, sprawled on the floor with my laptop perched on his knees, earbuds plugged in. In the kitchen, a young woman named Brooke rummaged through my cabinets, and on the fridge, a crudely handwritten note read, "The place was a bit messy. Helped tidy up and change the lock for safety. Best wishes, Mrs. Albright, HOA President." The name on that note made my blood run cold. Mrs. Albright wasn't just a Navarro, she was the head of the HOA, and she wielded that title like a weapon. Then came her voice, sharp and commanding from the kitchen. "Who do you think you are, barging into someone else's house?" She stepped out holding a glass of what was unmistakably my iced tea, her face set in a mask of self-righteous anger. I tried to explain, to stammer out that this was my home, but she cut me off with a flick of her hand and a smug smile. Pulling out her phone, she sneered, "Don't worry, sweetheart. I'll take care of this little intruder myself." Before I could react, she was on the phone, her voice rising into a performance worthy of an award. "Yes, this is Mrs. Albright, president of the community. I have a trespasser in my home. He's refusing to leave and is becoming aggressive. Please send someone immediately." My heart pounded as I pulled out my own phone and dialed 911. "My name is Jordan," I told the dispatcher, my voice shaking with anger. "I came home to find my neighbor moved her entire family into my cabin and is claiming it's hers." Minutes later, two officers, Evans and Roberts, arrived. Mrs. Albright rushed to them, crying crocodile tears and spinning an elaborate lie. She called me a transient, claimed she'd been authorized by the previous owner to watch over the property, and even produced a forged email from a defunct HOA account to prove her rights to be there. I tried to show my deed, my utility bills, anything that would confirm my ownership, but she snatched at my documents, tore a corner off, and declared them fake. The officers exchanged uncertain looks. Caught in what appeared to be a complicated civil dispute, they asked for additional proof. Mrs. Albright pretended to call a lawyer, a friend of hers, to back up her story. Finally, Officer Roberts turned to me with a sympathetic but firm expression. "We can't make an arrest without clearer evidence. For now, you'll need to leave for 24 hours. I walked away from my own house in a daze, my body heavy with disbelief. I ended up at a cheap motel nearby, staring at the blank walls, trying to comprehend how my sanctuary had been stolen from me so easily and wondering how I would ever take it back. Lonely and restless in that cramped motel room, I called my best friend, Leah, a young lawyer who had just launched his own practice, and poured everything out. He listened without interruption, then said with steady conviction, "We'll fight this, and we'll win." His words grounded me. The panic that had consumed me earlier began to morph into something sharper. Anger. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was malicious, and I refused to be her victim. I would be her reckoning. With that thought burning in my mind, I pulled out my phone and uploaded the short video I had recorded of the madness inside my cabin. I didn't post it just to reclaim my home, I posted it to reclaim my dignity. Jordan has been forced from his own house by Mrs. Albright's manipulation. His last hope rests on a single video posted online. But will anyone believe one man's story against a powerful HOA president? The motel felt less like shelter and more like a cage. Sleep was impossible. Every moment from earlier replayed on a loop of the smug triumph on Mrs. Albright's face, the officer's hesitant expressions, the casual comfort of her family sprawled around my living room like they owned it. The anger came in waves, mixing with fear. What if she really managed to take my cabin? What if Leo wasn't enough to stop her? That cabin wasn't just a property, it was my savings, my dream, my escape. And now it was slipping away because one woman had mastered the art of deceit. The walls of that tiny room pressed in on me, making it hard to breathe. Out of frustration, I posted the video and not expecting much, just needing to release the pressure building inside me. When I finally dozed off, it was with no sense of hope. But by morning, everything had changed. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Notifications poured in. The video had exploded online. It spread fast, shared, commented on, and dissected by thousands of strangers who were outraged on my behalf. My inbox overflowed with messages of support, and the internet had collectively christened Mrs. Albright as HOA Karen. Comments ranged from darkly funny to righteously furious, but they all carried the same sentiment. This wasn't just my fight anymore. For the first time in 24 hours, a spark of hope lit inside me. This wasn't just about my cabin anymore. It was about standing up to people like Hera, people who thought they could bully and manipulate others without consequence. Mrs. Albright didn't take it well. Her response was as aggressive as it was predictable. She blasted the community message board, accusing me of being a disruptive newcomer spreading lies about a respected community leader. She claimed I was trying to destroy the neighborhood's peace and urged everyone to ignore my baseless slander. Then she escalated, emailing every homeowner a formal-looking notice threatening to sue me for defamation. It was a power play, dishonest, manipulative, and arrogant. But her attempts to control the story backfired spectacularly. People began digging through her public posts, sharing screenshots of her past condescending messages about trash cans and lawn maintenance. They pointed out her hypocrisy, calling her out for causing the very drama she accused others of stirring. I created an open channel to give updates, and the support grew into something bigger than I'd imagined. Strangers online became an army of investigators, unearthing old stories, archived articles, and screenshots from her previous online profiles. They jokingly crowned her queen of the HOA, and the name stuck. One night, during a live stream where I was talking to viewers about the progress of my case, a message popped up from an unknown user. It was brief but urgent. "She's done this before. Look up Sunset Estates HOA. Ask for a man named Gary." Attached was a blurry photo. The image was blurry but unmistakably an old official document bearing Mrs. Albright's signature. My chest tightened. My heartbeat quickened. This wasn't just some internet rumor, this felt real. A lead that could turn my personal nightmare into something far bigger than I'd imagined. I immediately forwarded it to Leo. He urged caution, reminding me that online tips weren't always reliable, but even he couldn't ignore the specifics. A name, a place, and that hauntingly familiar signature. It was worth pursuing. My first search for Sunset Estates HOA alongside Mrs. Albright's name revealed almost nothing. She'd clearly worked hard to erase her past, but one name Gary kept surfacing in scattered, archived forum posts, linked to a bitter dispute years ago. The deeper I dug, the clearer it became. This wasn't an isolated incident. Her behavior wasn't a one-off power grab. It was a pattern. And Sunset Estates had been one of her earlier battlegrounds. The anonymous tip had given me a roadmap, a community, a man, and a past she thought she buried. If Gary had survived her wrath, he might hold the key to stopping her now. Jordan has led a man named Gary, who may know the truth about Mrs. Albright's past. What secrets does he hold, and will he be brave enough to reveal them? This is Anna Dramanest. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Fueled by purpose, I left the suffocating motel behind and drove over an hour to Sunset Estates. The neighborhood was nothing like the manicured, postcard-perfect streets I'd left behind. The houses were older, weathered, paint peeled on some, weeds grew freely in others. It felt like a place time had quietly abandoned, a fitting graveyard for the secrets of someone like her. My chest tightened with anticipation and dread. I had a name, but no guarantee Gary would talk to me. What if he didn't exist? What if he was loyal to her? Or worse, what if he was too terrified to even open the door? His house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, tidy but subdued, like someone was trying hard not to be noticed. I knocked, my hand trembling slightly. The door opened just a crack, revealing an elderly man with tired, watchful eyes and a weathered face etched with quiet suffering. Suspicion radiated off him. I introduced myself and said I had questions about an old home matter. The moment I mentioned her name, his expression hardened. He began to close the door. "I don't know who you're talking about," he rasped. "You've got the wrong man. Leave." But I knew, then and there, that my tip had been right. This wasn't a random stranger. This was someone who had lived through her destruction. I took a breath and spoke softly but firmly. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm a victim, too. She's living in my cabin right now. She called the police on me when I tried to come home. Your name came up as someone who might help. Please. She's tearing my life apart just like she did here, and I think you know it." I pulled out my phone and showed him the viral video. His eyes shifted as he watched, first shock, then anger, then something deeper, a grim, almost painful recognition. It was as though he'd been waiting years for someone to believe him. The door opened wider. He gestured me in quickly, then shut it behind us as if the air outside might betray him. His living room was neat, almost sacred in its stillness, a sanctuary carved out of decades of fear. And then, he began to talk. "Mrs. Albright had once ruled Sunset Estates as HOA president," he explained, "and she had been every bit the tyrant she was now, obsessed with control, obsessed with image, and willing to crush anyone who stood in her way." Gary had been the HOA's secretary. When he dared to challenge her decisions, she retaliated with calculated cruelty. She fabricated stories about his incompetence, even accused him of embezzling funds. Her smear campaign destroyed him. Forced to resign, ostracized by neighbors he'd once called friends, Gary had withdrawn into the shadows. "She's he began, his voice trembling with years of anger and pain. "She's a viper, son," Gary said, his voice barely above a whisper. "She'll lie, she'll cheat, she'll do whatever it takes to get what she wants. She made my life a living hell, took everything from me." But then, something shifted in his eyes, a faint, defiant spark. Even through his fear, he had never surrendered completely. He had seen the depths of her corruption, the backroom deals with shady contractors, the siphoned HOA funds, the projects designed to fail so she could profit off the ruins. As secretary, Gary had once had access to everything, a record she believed had been erased. But he hadn't destroyed his copies. He had kept his own secret archive, a dead file, waiting for the day someone would come who could finally use it. He disappeared into a back room and returned with a small, worn red notebook. It looked ordinary, but his hands treated it like sacred ground. "This is it," he said, placing it in my trembling palms. "Dates, names, project codes, everything she's done, the fake bids, the kickbacks, even copies of the documents she made vanish from the official files. It's all in here." I flipped through its pages, my heart pounding. This wasn't just evidence, it was Gary's quiet act of rebellion, years in the making, a weapon forged from truth. He had clung to it like a burning coal, waiting for the moment he could finally throw it back at her feet. "This," I whispered, "changes everything." But among the meticulous entries was something new, a name that wasn't a name at all, just initials. They appeared again and again, tied to her dirtiest deals. Whoever this person was, they weren't just a side player, they were part of something bigger. The red notebook was a Pandora's box of Mrs. Albright's corruption, fabricated documents, illegal schemes, stolen money, and now, a shadowy accomplice. Who were they, and what role did they play in her grand design? This is Anna Dromonest. What do you think? Who is the mysterious figure behind those initials? Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Leo, my lawyer, and I spent the next day dissecting the notebook, connecting names, dates, and projects like pieces of a sinister puzzle. The story that emerged was far worse than I'd imagined. She wasn't just manipulative, she was calculated, systematic. A predator hiding in plain sight, leaving broken lives scattered like breadcrumbs behind her. Turning this over to the police wasn't enough. She'd find a way to slither out of it, just like always. No, She needed to be exposed publicly, in a way she couldn't control or spin. This wasn't just about my cabin anymore, it was about justice for Gary, for Sunset Estates, and for everyone else she'd crushed under her heels. Sensing her empire crumbling, Mrs. Albright launched a desperate counterattack. She called an emergency home meeting, blasting an email to the entire neighborhood, a propaganda masterpiece. She accused me of spreading lies, of destabilizing the community, and even suggested that my behavior was grounds for expulsion. In her mind, that meant she could force me to sell my cabin and disappear for good. She wanted a showdown on her turf, with her loyalists watching. Worse, she planned to live-stream the entire thing on the HOA channel, hoping to humiliate me in front of everyone. Fine, let her. When the night came, I walked into that meeting with Leo and Gary by my side, a small army forged by her cruelty. The room buzzed with tension, neighbors whispering, eyes darting between us and her. And there she was, at the head of the long table, sitting like a queen awaiting her subjects. A smug smile carved across her face. She thought she was about to crush me, but she didn't realize she was about to hand me the perfect stage to destroy her. Mrs. Albright began her performance with a teary-eyed speech about my so-called betrayal and the pain I had caused the community. She even presented a forged affidavit, signed by a few of her loyal friends, labeling me as a known nuisance. She was good, dangerously good, and for a moment, I could see some of the attendees wavering, buying into her act. But just as she prepared to call for a vote on her resolution, I stood up, calmly, quietly. "May I have the floor?" I asked. The room went dead silent. All eyes shifted to me. I didn't shout. I didn't match her theatrics. I simply turned to the camera, the one she had set up to livestream this tragedy, and began my counterattack. I started with a simple, steady retelling of the night I returned to my cabin. Then, with a single click, I detonated the bomb I'd been saving. The viral video rolled first to the one where she screamed at me, her family squatting in my home, the police standing there, bewildered. Gasps rippled through the room. Then came the real weapon, the little red notebook. I explained exactly what it was and what it contained: dates, names, project codes, proof of everything she had done. The look on her face was priceless, panic cracking through her smug mask. She tried to shout over me, tried to call Gary a liar, but I cut her off with one final move, a video, secretly recorded and salvaged by my online investigators from a supposedly erased cloud server. In it, she bragged to her husband, Mr. Fletcher, about how easily she had deceived the police, and how my cabin was going to be her secret base for a new fraudulent project. The room exploded. Her loyalists stared at her in horror. Neighbors who once worshipped her now glared with open disgust. She lunged for her laptop to stop the video, but Leo blocked her effortlessly. Then the door opened. Two men in dark suits stepped in, badges raised. Federal agents. Leo, always 3 steps ahead, had tipped them off the moment we uncovered the evidence. They had been watching her ever since. Mrs. Albright, the Queen of Sunset Estates, the untouchable HOA Karen, was placed under arrest right there in front of everyone. And yet, as the cuffs clicked around her wrists, she turned to her husband and muttered a single word, barely audible. I couldn't catch it, but the look on Fletcher's face, a mixture of terror and shame, said it all. Whatever she'd whispered wasn't just a farewell, it was a command. "What do you think?" she said. "And how deep do you think this conspiracy really goes? Let me know in the comments where you're watching from." This is Anna Dramanest. The silence that followed her arrest was deafening. The livestream had been cut, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. Her performance hadn't ended with applause. It ended with handcuffs. Officer Roberts, the same cop who had once dismissed me, approached after the agents took her away. His voice was low, almost ashamed. "I should have listened to you," he said. I nodded. "You will next time." Meanwhile, Mr. Fletcher sat slumped in a chair, surrounded by neighbors who now looked at him as though he were a ghost. He wasn't a villain, not really, just a weak man pulled under by the gravity of her ambition. The realization of what she had done finally crushed him, and for the first time, he seemed to truly see her, not a powerful leader, but a desperate criminal willing to destroy anyone in her way. The agents turned to me next, stone-faced and efficient. "Walk us through the notebook," one of them said. I handed it over. explaining how Gary had documented everything: her fake bids, her kickbacks, her schemes. But buried among the pages was something even more chilling, a cryptic entry about a special savings account and a series of forged signatures tied to a medical claim. Whatever this was, it wasn't just HOA fraud anymore. It was bigger. It was an entry Leo and I had almost missed: a scribbled line buried deep in Gary's red notebook, but the federal agents didn't miss it. They recognized it instantly, the ghost of a long-dead trail, part of an old, unresolved case that had haunted them for years. Within minutes, they began connecting the dots with a chilling precision. Those worn pages revealed more than just petty HOA corruption. They mapped a pattern of deceit spanning years, even community, a scheme far darker than anyone in our quiet neighborhood could have imagined. After an hour of relentless questioning, Mr. Fletcher finally broke. He agreed to cooperate fully, confessing that his wife's obsession with my cabin wasn't about property at all. It was desperation. She was cornered, running from a past even he hadn't fully understood. His testimony, combined with the notebook, painted a much bigger picture: shady real estate scams, years of fraudulent construction projects, and then the revelation that shattered the room: insurance fraud on a massive scale. According to the agents, Mrs. Albright hadn't just been a neighborhood tyrant, she had once orchestrated a multi-million-dollar federal benefits scam, fake identities, forged medical claims, stolen money. When the heat got too close, she disappeared, abandoning her old life like a snake shedding its skin. My cabin? That wasn't her prize. It was just a hideout, a stage for her last, desperate performance. Her arrogance had finally caught up with her, not just with local authorities, but with the full force of federal law. The story spread fast. Jane Smith, our local reporter, was first to break it. HOA Queen's reign ends in federal fraud charges. The headline went viral. The community was reeling apart, anger, part shame, part relief. They had worshipped her, feared her, followed her. Now they saw her for what she was, a criminal who had fooled everyone, including them. My cabin, once just a personal refuge, had become the stage for her spectacular downfall. The scale of her crime, from petty HOA schemes to multi-million-dollar federal fraud, was staggering. This wasn't just my victory. It belonged to everyone she had exploited, lied to, and crushed underfoot. It was just loud, undeniable, and permanent. Even so, there were casualties. Mr. Fletcher, after fully cooperating, was allowed to walk free, but free was just a word. He was hollow now, a man stripped of illusions, his face a mask of shame. Brooke and Devon, their once pristine lives now shattered, became social pariahs. Their mother's sins had tainted them too. Justice had been served, but its echoes were messy, raw, and permanent. And yet, even as the federal agents led Mrs. Albright away, one question hung in the air like smoke: did she really act alone? The aftermath was chaos. News vans lined our streets. National reporters descended on our little community, eager to dissect the story of the HOA Queen whose empire had crumbled. My story, once just a viral video, was now a national headline, a cautionary tale about arrogance, power, and the lies we tell to keep control. It was surreal seeing my cabin on the news, my face on television, all of this because one woman had decided my home was hers for the taking. And yet, beneath the exhaustion, a quiet satisfaction settled in. Justice wasn't just a legal term in a textbook, it was real, it was tangible, it had weight. And for the first time in a long time, I believed in it. Where do you think this goes from here? And do you believe Mrs. Albright had partners still out there? Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. This is Anna Dramanest. The legal storm had only just begun. While Mrs. Albright was being processed through the system, facing charges not just for my cabin, but for the decades-old federal fraud her family was left to pick up the shattered pieces. Mr. Fletcher looked like he had aged 20 years overnight. I saw him once, dragging 2 small suitcases to his car, his head bowed so low it seemed he was folding in on himself. The weight of her lies had finally crushed him. Brooke and Devon, once so smug in my living room, were now invisible. No social media posts, no smug smiles, just silence. They were likely hiding, trying to escape the relentless public ridicule that now defined their lives. The family that had strutted into my home like they owned it was now fractured, exposed, and paying the price for the woman they had trusted. Their once busy Uzzy, always echoing with Mrs. Albright's sharp commands, it was now silent, a hollow shell, stripped of illusion. That silence said more than words ever could. Meanwhile, my cabin was still a mess. The smell of stale food clung to the air. A cheap air freshener she had used or something sweet and chemical hung around like a bad memory. Scuff marks scraped across my hardwood floors. I found a dirty sock tangled in my dishwasher, a footprint, an actual grimy footprint on the wall where my favorite painting used to hang, Devon's carelessness immortalized in dust. It was infuriating, but oddly, it also made me more determined to reclaim it, not just legally, but emotionally. Every stain, every scratch, was a battle scar, proof of what I'd survived. Turning the cabin from a crime scene back into a sanctuary became my mission. Every small repair felt like a victory. The paperwork was its own battle. Insurance claims, police reports, endless legal forms. Leo, my lawyer, handled it all with calm efficiency, shielding me from the worst of it. There were still a few stubborn holdouts, the whole loyalists of Mrs. Albright who tried to stir trouble. They filed frivolous complaints, accusing me of harassment and disrupting community peace, but without her power to back them, their efforts fizzled fast. Pathetic echoes of a fallen regime. The bigger shift was in the community itself. The revelation of Mrs. Albright's decades of fraud had shaken everyone. Older residents, the ones who had trusted her most, were furious at themselves. But something surprising happened. People began talking, really talking. They started questioning how power had gone unchecked for so long. They demanded better. For the first time, it felt like change might actually happen. It all came to a head at a special home meeting to elect a new board. The room felt different this time, somber but hopeful. Several longtime residents stood up and apologized to me. They admitted how they'd let her charm blind them, how they wished they'd questioned her sooner. It was raw, humbling, a collective acknowledgement of failure and the start of something better. And then, during nominations for the new board, a surprising name came up, Mr. Gary. At first, he hesitated. He still carried the weight of everything she'd done to him, but the community rallied around him. They saw his quiet courage, his meticulous nature, his commitment to doing what was right. He was elected unanimously to a key position. It wasn't just a change in leadership, it felt like a redemption, and it all started because of a viral video and a little red notebook. This is Anna Dromanest. Where do you stand on Thesa? Would you have forgiven the community, or walked away for good? It was a powerful testament to the community's desire for real, trustworthy leadership. Seeing Mr. Gary, a man once silenced and cast aside, step into a position of respect and authority was nothing short of remarkable. Residents, eager to make amends, even organized a small fundraiser to help repair my cabin. It wasn't just about fixing a house, it was about fixing something deeper, their broken trust, and watching it all come together was incredible. My cabin began to transform. The smells that clung to the air finally faded. The scuff marks vanished under fresh polish. New paint breathed life into the walls. Every nail driven into place, every stroke of the brush, it all felt symbolic. This wasn't just a renovation, it was a reclamation. I live-streamed parts of the process, sharing it with my online community. They'd been with me through every twist and turn, and their encouragement fueled me, even in the darkest times. There's always a community ready to stand with you. The cabin wasn't just my sanctuary again, it was stronger, a beacon of resilience in a world that can feel brutally unfair. The final day of renovation was bittersweet. My space was restored. Justice had been served. A broken bar, but a letter had just arrived from Mr. Fletcher, Mrs. Albright's broken husband, hinting at one last unsettling secret. What could he possibly reveal that would change everything again? Still, as I placed a fresh bouquet of wildflowers on the kitchen counter and admired the gleam of my polished floors, I felt peace. This was more than a home now, it was proof that you can survive chaos and come out stronger. To celebrate, I threw a small housewarming, nothing extravagant, just close friends, Leo, and Mr. Gary, the quiet hero of this whole ordeal. We laughed, we grilled barbecue on my new setup, we toasted to justice. Gary, now an HO board leader, looked like he had shed years of fear. He was no longer the man living in the shadows. He was a respected voice of reason, and the community needed him. Leo clinked his glass to mine. "I still can't believe it," he said. "Federal agents, the diary, the whole thing a broken bar, it's like a movie." I chuckled. "Yeah, except it was all very, very real." Gary nodded. "I lived through her drama once before, son. But this was different. You faced her head on with nothing but your phone and your wits. You gave me the courage to do what I should have done years ago." His words hit me harder than I expected. This fight had never really been just about my cabin. It was about everyone she had hurt. And now, finally, there was collective Victoria community free of her grip. But then my phone buzzed. A message from Leo. Subject line: "A letter from Mr. Fletcher." I stepped outside onto the porch, the cool night air grounding me. The letter was short, written in a shaky, almost apologetic hand. Fletcher explained that after her arrest, he had found something in her closet, her private diary, a little leather-bound journal she'd kept for years. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He wasn't even really apologizing. He just said, "You deserve to know." This is the last piece of the puzzle. And suddenly, I realized that his story wasn't over. This is Anna Dromanest. What would you do? Read the diary, or burn it and walk away? For the first time, all of her actions, and no matter how cruel, finally made sense. Mr. Fletcher was a broken man, trying to piece together the wreckage of losing his wife and his family. And now, through his letter, I was about to see the truth for myself. My hands trembled as I opened the attached file, the glow of my phone casting a new kind of darkness over me. It wasn't a confession of guilt. It wasn't even an apology. It was a window into the mind of Mrs. Albright, a raw, unfiltered glimpse of her world. The entries were venomous, steeped in self-pity and entitlement. She wrote about her painful divorce, how she felt she lost all control, and how she began using her role as HO president to claw back just a little bit of that power. Page after page revealed her bitterness and vanity, her catalog of perceived slights, and the vengeful plans she crafted against anyone who dared to cross her. To her, these weren't moral failings. They were righteous acts, a woman reclaiming what she believed was hers. That twisted logic made my blood run cold. She wrote about her inadequacy, her constant comparisons to others, and how her only true joy came from manipulating the lives around her. But the most shocking part wasn't her rage. It was her fear. She described, in haunting detail, how her fraudulent investment scheme had collapsed, leaving her drowning in secret debts. And my cabin? It hadn't been a random choice. It was her escape route. She planned to use it as a base to launch yet another scam, a new and improved plan to get rich quick, as she called Ida, so she could regain her lost status. Her arrogance leapt off the page. "Jordan is a naive little boy," she wrote. "He'll never see it coming. I'll get away with it again. I always do." The delusion was staggering, and suddenly, I understood her not just as a villain, but as a deeply fractured person, building her life on a fragile house of cards, waiting for the smallest gust of wind to knock it all down. Every action she took was about preserving the facade of control, a mask so convincing that even her own husband believed it. I closed the file and exhaled a long, shaky breath, and in that moment, I made a choice. I wouldn't share this with the world. Her public downfall, the arrests, the mockery, the jail time, it was punishment enough. To expose her private thoughts now would feel like a final cruelty, one I wasn't willing to commit. Justice had been served. Now it was time to move on. Her secrets would stay between me and that silent diary, a private victory more powerful than any public takedown. The next day, I filmed a final video for my channel. I walked my viewers through my pristine, fully restored cabin, a monument to resilience and community. I spoke about the importance of standing up for yourself, no matter how small you feel. I talked about healing, and not just for my home, but for myself. And then, with a knowing smile and a final sarcastic nod to the woman who started it all, I wrapped it up. And that's the unbelievable story of how justice was finally served. The lesson: never underestimate the power of truth and community. I glanced at the camera one last time. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to hit like. Hello, and see you in the next video on Anna Dromanest. This has been Anna Dromanest, where reality is stranger, messier, and way funnier than fiction. Subscribe now, and hit that bell because things are only going to get weirder.